Alright, so obviously there's a reason why we, yeah, Mrs. Dude and I definitely have visited the mouse a few times, and kitchen stuff has made its way home. So, let me pull this sucker on out of the oven. And deposit said item right here. Now, I've been holding it for about 170 degrees or so. It's not real flipping hot, but you know what? It's kind of maybe just a little warm to grab by hand. So let's get the overarching camera view. Of course, trash cans messing with me. So let's go from there. All right, it's a little warm, but it's just warm enough so you probably don't want to grab it by hand, but you actually can grab it by hand. But it's 170 degrees, so let me pull this sucker on up, and yeah, that's not fake steam. That's not dressed up. That's just simply the way it's going to look. So let's go from there. Okay, so basically we got ourselves some piggage. It was about a 3-4 pound tenderloin or something like that. I'd have to yank the package out of the trash, and I'm not going to do that. But it was really cheap at the place where we go shopping at. But basically, it was a pork sirloin. So, not too terribly insubstantial piece of meat. Into this was a Granny Smith apple. I'm sorry, a Golden Delicious apple. I basically diced up, threw in there. To help it along, we have... Okay, I'm just going to go through the ingredients real quick here. A good splash of, well, not my favorite wine, but it's Maryland wine from Bordy. This is their Bordy Blush. It's a nice kind of almost, it's a little bit of a white thing. Not too great. But it's mild enough to cook with. Okay, into that went a good hunk of some ALLSPICE. Some of my very favorite Madras curry. Love this stuff. Some paprika. Cinnamon. Sage. Cloves. Rosemary leaves. Of course, flash cracked black pepper. And some sea salt. Also, a good inducement of some garlic powder. And, of course, a good inducement of some onion powder, because it's piggage. You have to cook with salt items. Some cumin. Pig loves cumin. You got to cook with cumin when you're doing pig. And some ground ginger. Now, what I basically did was I gave this a rub. And I went outside and I was going to use my grill, but unfortunately it's so windy that the flame was just blowing everywhere and the grill was just about useless. I even tried fencing it up with my chairs out there, and it just was just flat out useless. So I came up with a rub that basically was the... most of the non-aromatics. I mean, this stuff, the rosemary, the sage, the clove, the ALLSPICE pretty much went into the pot. And all this stuff pretty much had the wine over it. And the reason being is most of that stuff was over, well, it was over the apples. But the first thing I did was I threw some butter in there. I got the pan, well, the crock up to temperature in a 350 degree oven. Took this out. Basically, the meat was rubbed. The meat got basically, well, seared on top of the stove in a frying pan. It got deglazed with the wine and all that rest of that good stuff went into the apples. But the apples first were in a hot crock, covered in butter, a little bit of cinnamon, some other good stuff, and letting them kind of do their work. Now, the kicker is, you got to think along the lines of French cooking. French cooking uses the fond, or the foundation. The foundation has to be as such that basically you start with little pieces and you keep adding to it. So, pretty much, the veggies are doing their thing in the pan, okay? Or in this case, the apples. You know, apples, all right, let me see if I can't find little wankers. And they actually still do have some tooth to them because they're staying put on the fork. And I haven't tasted this yet, so I'm going to taste that on camera. But you have to have your foundation. The first thing that happens is your apples are getting a little bit of a toasting in there. They're combining with the butter, and they're kind of putting down this nice foundation in the bottom of the pan. Now, the meat basically got seared in a frying pan on top of the stove, and I basically cooked all the sides to lock in the yummies. This had a rub on it. Of course, it had a little bit of butter in the pan. It had some more spices from the spice mix that I worked up. Dumped that into the pan. All that stuff was swimming together and doing all its various good stuff, and it was building the base. Now, when you take all that stuff out, well, it's not going to be easy. You take the meat out, there's going to be all that yumminess left in the bottom of the pan. You don't want to waste that. Hence the wine. You splash some wine in there, you give it a good swish, and you stir up all the yummies. So it was a non-stick frying pan, it's not that really stayed put. In the classic sense, you take a wooden spoon, you basically scrape up all the yummies that are stuck in the bottom of the pan. That's the stuff you want to save, because that goes in and that hits the meat and becomes this wonderful base for everything else to taste good upon. Now, all these spices and everything, you know, they have the little nuances and what have you, and you have to toss them all in together and make them do the various things. But if you don't have a good foundation, it's all for naught. So let me just give this sucker a bit of bite and see what we get. So hack up the piggage, and it has been basically sitting at about 170-ish degrees or so. So it's not suffering. Heartily commend this type of cooking to you guys. French cooking rocks. Of course, I kind of smattered a little bit of everybody in there. The apples were like the German thing. The French was like the wine, the cumin, and the curry is me. Folks, I'm gonna break off on this one. Eat good and all the good stuff like that. There. Thank you, Father. That's really good. It's nice. It's piggy, but it's not like knock you over the head with like too many flavors and things. I'm gonna yank a piece out of some of these apples and combine them all. Now the nice thing is with all these flavors that are going on in the background, the cinnamon and the clove and all the rest of that good stuff, you kind of have this nice holiday thing going on in there. Where it's this time of the year anyway, where all the cold stuff is happening. So you want to really kind of you want to cue into that holiday flavor thing. So I'm gonna move this out of the way so you guys can see what I'm doing here. You want to cue into that holiday flavor thing that you're going to be playing with anyway. Pumpkin pie, obviously. Turkey, ham, Thanksgiving, all the rest of that good stuff. There is a lot of flavor cues. And you can see how this thing's it's fork tender, okay? Literally, I'm breaking this thing up with a fork, okay? So, let me grab a bit of apple. All right, you want to be obnoxious. I'm going to grab a bigger piece of bit of apple. Hardly commend the stuff you break off with this one. It's really nice. It's got this really unctuous mouthfeel, where you kind of have that good fatty thing going on. But it's not heavy because this is basically just like a really nice light piece of cut. Just give me a second here. Yeah, I commend this to you guys. I mean, I haven't need to really come up with a recipe or anything. If there's anything I would do is maybe tail back a little bit on the cinnamon and maybe tail back a little bit on the clove. But those aren't taken over. They're just a little bit too strong, but it's still a really good dish. And I'm pretty much just looking at all the vegetable-based recipes I have on, and every single one of them, it just didn't hit the flavor cues I was looking for. I mean, I was looking online, and everything's like, roasted pork loin, and every single one of them is roughly about the same. You know what? Let me try a little tweak here. Let me try one little tweak. And this is kind of one of those crossover things that most people just don't think about. Standard brown mustard, of course, is making a puddle. That's why I don't use this stuff. Mrs. Dude loves them. This one. I like Gouldens. But if you were to do a mustard base with this thing, I think it would probably work, because you get that good, sharp, pungent thing with the mustard. And let me break off on this bite. Yeah. Yeah. That's it exactly. That whole mustard seed, kind of deep flavor note really gives it something. The vinegar really helps a little bit. Yep, definitely the turmeric and the paprika and the mustard and all the rest of that good stuff. But the nice thing is I didn't kill this thing by roasting it to death. I mean, yeah, the apples are really, really soft, but they're not like gush. And they've absorbed this piggy yumminess. All right, folks, I'm going to break off on this one, but I'm going to give you the overflight here. If you can, go to the store, get yourself some of this pig roast. Give it a rub, give it a little bit of a sear, throw it into one of these crocks, hit it with some wine, some other good yummies. You will not regret what you've just done for yourself, because that is going to be one tasty, tasty meal. I'm going to break off on this one, guys. Eat good, keep it a tendering, and pork yumminess. Good time. See you guys.